Tonight on NewsWatch.
Today, the court once again walked away from decades of precedent.
The U.S. Supreme Court issues a landmark ruling affecting college admissions. We speak to a law professor about the decisions. Plus,
the truth is there is no end in sight.
Southeast Ohio and millions of other Americans are still under air quality alert. We'll take a look at when this smoke could leave our area. And travel nightmare. Millions are stranded as July 4th travel begins. NewsWatch starts right now. The U.S. Supreme Court makes a ruling impacting future generations of college students and campus life. Good evening, I'm Aria Lyons. Welcome to NewsWatch. The conservative majority court earlier today ruled against using race as a part of the college and university admissions. Karen Kaifa is in Washington with the details.
President Joe Biden expressing his disagreement with Thursday's landmark Supreme Court ruling banning race as a factor in college admissions.
Today, the court once again walked away from decades of precedent.
Overturning decades of precedent, the court's conservative justices struck down affirmative action programs at Harvard University and the University of North Carolina. Programs the institutions argued helped them to diversify their student bodies. The justices said such programs violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing in the majority opinion, both programs lack sufficiently focused and measurable objectives warranting the use of race, unavoidably employ race in a negative manner, involve racial stereotyping, and lack meaningful endpoints. Joined by liberal justices Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson in her dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote, "The court subverts the constitutional guarantee of equal protection by further entrenching racial inequality in education." The majority opinion said students may still address race in an application, like expressing how it's impacted their lives in an admissions essay. But the ruling will reverberate through the American college admissions process.
It will force every university to redo their admissions policies and try to figure out different ways to achieve diversity.
And potentially impact generations of American students. In Washington, I'm Karen Kaifa.
And earlier today, we spoke with Lee Strang, a law professor at the University of Toledo, to discuss what the ruling means and what the future criteria may be for the admissions process. So could you explain exactly what this ruling means?
Yeah, so this case challenged the admissions programs at Harvard University, which is the oldest university in America, and then University of North Carolina, which is one of the oldest public universities in North America. And both of those admissions process used race at different points in the multi-step process. And what the factual findings were, as credited by the Supreme Court, was that in many instances, race was a determinative factor in who was admitted and then who was not admitted. And the Supreme Court said that use of race by Harvard and by UNC, which many universities use race in similar fashions, violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause.
Could you give us a brief history and evolution of affirmative action?
Sure. Affirmative action was first used as a term and then probably as an activity in the Kennedy administration. The Kennedy administration identified affirmative action as a way to give racial and ethnic minorities not necessarily an advantage, but to make sure that they were included in the hiring processes of the federal government. And then affirmative action beginning in the 1970s proliferated beyond government hiring to all different aspects of American society. The first major case was a 1978 case called Bakke versus University of California, Davis Medical School, where the Supreme Court in a fractured opinion upheld the idea of affirmative action, but in that particular case struck down the University of California, Davis's use of it because the use was a quota or a set aside. And then that's where the law stood up until 2003, so about 25 years later, when the Supreme Court in a case called Grutter versus Bollinger upheld the University of Michigan Law School's use of affirmative action as, quote, one factor among many in the determination of admissions to the law school.
So how will the lack of race consideration impact future enrollment in colleges and universities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it depends on a lot of variables. So one variable is what happens if schools stop using race, period, in their admissions policies, which is what the court suggests that schools should do, at least as a direct matter. And you can look at states like California and Michigan, both of which passed state constitutional amendments that prohibited the use of race in admissions. And just to be fully open, there's debates about what the impact of those amendments were. My reading of the evidence is that those state school systems overall had increases in racial and ethnic diversity, but that there was a kind of stratification of the racial and ethnic diversity. So, for example, at the highest level of the University of California system, there's actually in some schools a majority of Asian Americans, whereas Hispanic Americans and African Americans tended to have higher proportions, but at schools in different points in the ranking. I think another variable will be to what degree will the schools indirectly try to utilize race to achieve the same criteria, the same goals that they had previously been using. And I think there's good evidence to think that universities will do that. Universities arguably have been, and that's actually the court's perspective, have been working very fast and loose with the constraints that the Supreme Court had put down in Greta versus Bollinger. So it wouldn't be surprising that they would continue to try and use means indirectly to achieve their same goals of racial and ethnic diversity they've previously been using.
Are there instances where race could still be considered?
Yeah, so the court, and you saw this actually in the oral argument as well, there was a lot of debate over if a university could not use race in its express criteria to admit or not admit students, are there other ways in which race is relevant to university admissions policies? And the majority opinion written by Chief Justice Roberts for 6 justices acknowledged that, for example, if a student has experiences as a racial or ethnic minority that have helped form that student to be a better man or woman, and therefore a better student in school, maybe a better citizen in the future in the United States, that would be a relevant consideration for the university that the university could take into account. So there are ways in which the Supreme Court majority expressly acknowledged the use of race, but only in an indirect way. You could also imagine a state university, let's say like Ohio State, where I'm currently at Ohio, using other proxies that have correlations to race, but in fact themselves are not race, like, for example, zip codes, making sure that Ohio State has a certain number of students from every zip code in the state of Ohio would be another way to try and maintain a level of racial and ethnic diversity that reflects Ohio generally without using race itself. So I think there are a lot of tools and mechanisms that universities can and likely will use.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Professor Strang.
My pleasure.
The court has yet to issue rulings on 2 major cases, one looking at whether businesses can deny services to LGBTQ customers, and the long-awaited decision on President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program. Tomorrow is the final day for the court to issue rulings for the current term. For the second day in a row, Ohio remains under an air quality alert. In southeast Ohio, the air quality is labeled as unhealthy, and several counties are just coming out of the very unhealthy range. Very tiny ash particles from the wildfires in Canada are in the air, and they can settle in people's lungs and sinus tracts. For most healthy people, you can clear the particles by coughing or blowing your nose, but the risk of respiratory difficulties is still present, especially for those with underlying health issues. Dr. Jack Butterfield, the medical director of the Zanesville-Muskingum Health Department, says there are several ways to prevent potential health issues.
So, staying indoors when possible, having, putting off your outdoor activities, your mowing, your weed eating, especially if it involves a lot of exertion, and staying well hydrated.
Ohio's air quality is projected to be better tomorrow, but other parts of the country are being affected as well. Meanwhile, more than a dozen states are also under air quality alerts. Ivan Rodriguez reports on which cities are seeing the greatest impact in the health concerns connected to poor air quality.
What made you put the mask on today?
I just didn't feel comfortable with the air quality. Honestly, the smoke is just, it's just too much for me.
More than 100 million people are under air quality alerts across a dozen states, from Minnesota to New York and down to the Carolinas, prompting officials to call on the public to stay safe by staying indoors with the AC running or wearing N95 masks if they have to be outdoors.
Air quality is unhealthy in every corner of the state of New York.
Chicago had the worst air quality among major cities around the world early Thursday, according to IQ Air. Washington, D.C., Minneapolis, Detroit, and New York cities were in the top 10 most polluted. Wildfire smoke carries particulate matter, or PM 2.5, a dangerous pollutant. Dr. Afif El Hassan, who specializes in lung health, explains what happens when you breathe it in.
When you breathe in air from wildfires, what very often ends up happening is not only are you inhaling ash and particles, but you're inhaling chemicals as well.
Smoke will continue drifting across the Midwest and into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast on Thursday. The forecast shows the air quality will begin to improve over the next couple days.
The truth is, there is no end in sight.
All of this as parts of the country endure a deadly heat wave, with parts of Texas already seeing triple-digit heat for more than 2 weeks. Reporting for NewsWatch, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
Joining us with more on the hazy conditions is NewsWatch forecaster Emily Dietz. How's it going, Emily?
Pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad. Emily, when will we see the smoke move out of our area?
Yeah, so we're really looking to see the next couple of days, maybe 3 to 4 days, being pushed out of the way by some rain. And along with that rain is coming in some warm weather that we're already starting to see today. Right now it's about 86 outside with, once again, those hazy skies. It's just really thick outside and not a lot of breeze to really cool you off or anything. And so we recommend just really keeping your windows closed, not only for those hazy weather, but also to keep that heat in. Now you may notice we see an air quality alert for a lot of Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and surrounding states, and that's because those particles are still moving through the air. Now you see on this map, it's a little different from what we saw yesterday. It's not quite as thick, but over Ohio, we're seeing a lot of that yellow and green still, and that's from that smoke still being in the atmosphere. So we're still seeing that particles move down from the north to the south, but things have cleared up for our friends out in Indiana and near Illinois. And that's mainly because we're seeing a bit of rain move into that direction. Now here's a good look at the storm track that we're seeing. We're under a general risk area or even no rain. So the way that this rain is going to move, it's going to move from the west and down to the south. So we're really expecting to see some move in later this week. Be sure to stay tuned for my full forecast. We're going to look a bit closer at the rain expected.
Thanks, Emily. 2 people are in custody in Meigs County on drug trafficking charges. Meigs County Sheriff's deputies arrested 42-year-olds Stoney Day and Carissa Lane, both of Pomeroy. According to the Sheriff's Office, deputies found approximately 5 ounces of methamphetamine, a large amount of heroin, fentanyl, drug paraphernalia, and cash after serving a search warrant at a home in Racine. Officers detained 2 other individuals who were released following the search warrant. Former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder will be spending up to 20 years in prison for bribery. A jury convicted Householder for organizing a $60 million scheme secretly funded by the utility company First Energy to secure the speakership, elect allies, and pass a $1 billion bailout of 2 nuclear power plants. The incident has been called the largest corruption case in Ohio's history. Coming up after the break, millions are stranded across the country as the holiday weekend approaches. Plus, as millions of Americans travel for the holiday weekend, we take a look at how not to take home a bed bug as a souvenir.
Rain is on the forecast for this upcoming weekend. We'll hopefully push some smoke out of the way when we return on NewsWatch.
The Federal Aviation Administration predicts today will be the busiest day for July 4th air travel, but stormy weather and a backlog from days of delays and cancellations could mean continued headaches for many flyers. Laura Geary with more on how the travel rush is shaping up.
Coast to coast, air travel is testing patience.
And then I got a text message on my phone from United saying that it was just canceled with no explanation, no we're going to rebook you, just canceled and that's it.
As July 4th air travel throttles up Thursday, the ripple effect from days of delays and cancellations are still being felt.
Oh my God, it was horrible, but check your flights ahead of time, way ahead of time.
Behind that backlog, severe storms that pummeled much of the U.S. earlier in the week, compounding existing issues like staffing shortfalls at airlines and the FAA.
There need to be more resources for air traffic control. That's why we're hiring 1,500 more controllers this year. We got plans for another 1,800 controllers next year.
But one major carrier is standing out.
United Airlines has some internal issues they need to work through. They've really been struggling this week, even relative to other U.S. airlines.
United's had the majority of daily disruptions since last Monday, according to FlightAware. The airline and the federal government trading blame for the problems. But in a statement Thursday, United vows an all-hands-on-deck effort to get their passengers moving and say operations will be restored for the holiday weekend. This promise, as more storms across the South and Midwest Thursday could add new ground stops and delays into the mix, which could be the breaking point for some.
I'm ready to rent a car and drive 18 hours.
Reporting for NewsWatch, I'm Laura Aguirre.
Today was a pretty unfortunate day to be outside. Not only are we seeing hazy skies, but it's also pretty warm out. It's about 86, and even though this says a high of about 87 overall for today, it even felt like over 91 or over 90 degrees out, so pretty warm day. Just a good day to stay inside, keep your AC running, and keep those windows closed, because that's also going to keep out some of the smoky weather that we've been seeing up from Canada. We have air quality alerts for all over the state of Ohio, as well as the surrounding states, and we're going to keep monitoring that over the next couple of days. Now we're also seeing some rain begin to move in from the west and down towards the south, so unfortunately that's not really going to be making its way towards us today, so we're still going to see a little bit of haze because we're just on the edge of that thunderstorm area. But within the next couple of days we are expecting a bit more rain to come. Now here's a look at our live radar of how these storms are moving in. You can really see that west movement down towards the south because that's actually following this low pressure system that's following a warm front. So we have a little bit of high pressure around the area. That's kind of helping to direct this low pressure to move south. And when low pressure is with a warm front, it typically follows the path of the warm front. But don't worry, we're expecting some rain to follow behind it. So hopefully this rain that you kind of see popping up around Kansas area is going to be moving in within the next couple of days. Now tonight we'll see mostly cloudy skies as we're touching the edge of the system that's moving down to the south today. We'll have a low of about 65, and we're going to see very similar conditions tomorrow, about high of 87 with a low of 67 with a 70% chance of showers. And here's our thunderstorm risk area. We're going to be just on the edge of a marginal risk, so not a chance of pop-up thunderstorms to come, But tomorrow we're going to look at this low pressure system as it starts to make its way towards the east, pushing towards us, giving us a little bit of rain moving forward. And on Saturday, we're really going to see a lot more rain come into the area. If you look out to the west, there's just a lot of precipitation on its way. So Saturday and Sunday, we're really expecting to be rainy days, unfortunately, for this 4th of July weekend, a 70 and 80% chance of showers. It'll still be pretty warm out up into the 80s for this upcoming week. Monday, things will slow down a little bit. We'll be at a 60% chance of showers. And Tuesday, we're looking at a 40% chance of thunderstorms, but it's mainly going to be in the morning. So by the afternoon, hopefully things will clear up, leaving us with partly cloudy skies. A great day to celebrate the 4th of July. Back over to you, Ariel.
Thanks, Emily. As the summer travel season kicks into high gear, industry experts are warning travelers to keep an eye out for bed bugs. Patrick Cornell has 5 tips on how to protect you and your family.
Keep unwanted guests from ruining your summer vacay. As a potentially record number of Americans travel this summer, one expert warns that a very unwelcome pest is multiplying this season.
We're definitely seeing bed bug spread again. Most experts will tell you they expect numbers to get back to where they were pre-COVID eventually.
Bed bugs are not known to spread infectious diseases to humans, but the bites can cause severe skin reactions that itch. Entomologist Jeffrey White, and owner of White Mantis Consultants, has these tips to spot a major infestation. 1. Inspect the room. Check mattress seams, headboard, and the box spring for tiny brownish red stains or live bugs.
No matter how, expensive a hotel may be, you can potentially encounter bed bugs. We've seen bed bugs in 5-star hotels that can cost more than $1,000 a night type stuff.
2. Keep your luggage elevated. Put it on a desk or bathroom counter to minimize the chances of bugs crawling into your belongings.
Anytime you can keep any personal belongings away from the bed, that's always a good step.
3. Use plastic bags to store your dirty clothes and avoid bugs from hitching a ride home. 4. Once you get home, isolate your luggage and inspect it. And 5. Wash clothes in hot water and dry them on high heat.
It's all about what you do when you return home.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Patrick Cornell.
After the break, ways you can protect yourself from mosquitoes this summer. And to stay up to date on the latest from NewsWatch, check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. The CDC has issued an alert of locally acquired cases of malaria in Florida and Texas as mosquito season begins. Mandy Gaither has more on how one scientist says you can keep mosquitoes away.
They're long-legged, annoying, and many times you don't even know they're there.
Humans have been at war with mosquitoes for literally, millennia.
And these insects are more than just a nuisance. Every year, diseases mosquitoes and other vectors can spread cause more than 700,000 deaths worldwide. And in summer, they're out in full force.
It provides a really fantastic environment for the mosquitoes to get out and about and enjoy their daily hunt for humans.
Connor McMenamin works with Johns Hopkins Malaria Research Institute and studies the attraction of mosquitoes to humans. He says that while the insects are tiny, they have a powerful sense of smell and can track chemical signatures the human body emits through our breath and skin odor.
Some people are more attractive to mosquitoes than others. And we think a large part of the reason for this is the way that we smell to different mosquito species.
McMenamin says the best way to protect against mosquitoes is to be prepared. In your home, use window screens, air conditioning, and fans to make the environment less inviting. In your yard, tip out standing water and remove debris where mosquitoes may congregate and breed. And protect your body. Cover up with long sleeves and pants or apply an EPA-registered insect repellent.
Those containing active ingredients such as DEET, picaridin, IR3535 are really wonderful synthetic ingredients that ward away mosquitoes.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
When we return, we have a final look at your weather. But first, here's a look at what's coming up tonight on your public television station. Welcome back. I'm joined again by NewsWatch forecaster Emily Dietz. Emily, for those traveling this weekend, what can they expect?
Yeah, we're looking at some rain coming in, and hopefully it won't be too many thunderstorms. But tonight we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a low of about 65. And tomorrow we're looking at a 70% chance of showers. That's mainly going to be in the evening with a high of about 87 and another low of 67. Now tomorrow we've also got a risk of thunderstorms moving into the area. We'll be under a general thunderstorm risk, even moving into a marginal. And that's just going to be some pop-up showers, some rain, and that rain moving in tomorrow will also carry over into Saturday and into this weekend. And hopefully that'll carry out a lot of the smoke that we're seeing as well. So while we're seeing rain Saturday, Sunday, and even into Monday, hopefully we'll see hazy skies start to lessen, and Tuesday things will start to clear up.
Thanks, Emily. That does it for our broadcast this evening. Thanks for watching. For Emily Dietz, I'm Arielle Lyons. Stay tuned for the PBS NewsHour coming up next. And remember, you can find the latest news anytime on WOUB.org or follow us on social media. Have a great night.